Hello, everybody,
Hey,
and welcome back to the Manor House Interviews podcast. I am Tino, and this is,
Natalie.
and today we're joined by a special guest. We're joined by Maxwell Kozen. We wanted to do this in person in Canada. However, we have,
Recently found
yeah,
out.
we have the UK has gained another musician, so we're very happy.
Yeah.
So we have Maxwell Kozen. Max, want to give us an introduction into who you are?
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me on the show. It's I admit as well, of kind of a funny coincidence that I'd been vaguely aware at least of Tino and his music for a while. And now here we are getting to do this in the same time zone. So that's great. Um, yeah. But yeah, I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I am a singer, songwriter, primarily guitarist. Play in a band called Kozen. It's my name. It was my band. Started as a solo project and then turned into a band as more people joined.
That makes
Um,
sense.
our style, I guess the easiest reference point is to say progressive metal. So in the same, I guess the most obvious examples that like the average person would reasonably know about would be like Rush, Dream Theater, those kinds of bands, but maybe a bit heavier, but not that much heavier. But that's kind of the space we exist in. It occupies an interesting middle ground between I think most people at some level know us as being a Christian band, but by no means is our music designed for playing in church by any means at all without the sending the saints to the emergency room to the hospital unintentionally of course.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of the fine line we walk.
I love
And yeah,
that.
I think that's a reasonable introduction.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. You mentioned that it started as a solo project, so I'm very curious of kind of like growing up. How did you get into music? How did you find out you like playing the guitar or like singing, that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah. Growing up, I mean, in terms of my family, it was, I mean, Adventists. There's a lot of singing almost by default. My mom was the children's choir director at church, and so singing just kind of came with the territory. My dad played a bit of guitar. My parents had us in piano lessons early on. And so it was kind of, music was just kind of a given in our household. And I think that's the case for a lot of people who really grow to love music, is that like it's just part of family life. But yeah, Friday evenings, Sabbath worship, we would sing together a lot. Eventually, like my dad played guitar, and eventually I was like, yeah, I think I want to play guitar. Piano lessons just aren't really doing it for me. As a little 10-year-old boy, you're just like, I don't want to play the piano, I want to rock and roll. But, eventually got around to that. And once I picked up the guitar, that was it for me. That was my life. That was almost just my identity. Um, and yeah, from there, it just came very naturally, I guess.
How long have you been playing guitar?
Ooh, wow. Been playing guitar. I guess I got my first guitar when I was 12, and I'm 35 now. So over half my life, honestly. Like I said, it feels like it's
Crazy.
just part of me at this point.
I
Love
love
that.
that. Yeah. And you mentioned, kind of growing up singing in church and kind of that kind of stuff. Um, a lot of people we talk to, the stuff that they grow up listening to or the stuff that they grow up singing is the stuff that they end up making. But I'm guessing you weren't singing, progressive metal in your children's Sabbath school. So
Yeah, no.
talk us through that journey.
Imagine.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I guess, and this is one of those conversations that I guess gets a little curious for an Adventist audience. They're just like, how do you end up in metal of all things? And I think that was, like my parents were not super, super strict as far as Adventist parents go. We consumed a lot of media from all across the spectrum. My dad took me to like my first rock concerts. Like he took me to see Bon Jovi when I was like 11 or 12 or something. So that was
So dope.
like, I was like, yeah, that's cool. I want to hear loud guitars. And that was never really treated in our household like it was some kind of contradiction. So I was just able to be like, oh yeah, I love Jesus. I like rock music. I what? And so and I guess the other thing too was that I had a very multifaceted exposure to music, in the sense that, like, my mom really grew up loving gospel music. So I grew up on Brooklyn Tabernacle and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
in my
Yeah,
teenage years.
OGs.
So I was in like, I was in that generation where the really popular metal subgenre was nu metal. So like Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, POD, Korn, which was not heavy on guitar solos. It was very much just like rhythm and groove. And so for a little while, I thought like, oh, yeah, I don't like guitar solos. I don't like shredding. I'll never learn how to do that. Also, that was just me compensating for insecurity because I didn't think I could learn how to do that. And so this really interesting thing happened where my dad introduced me to BB King. And so all of a sudden I clued in like, oh, blues, right, kind of the foundation of everything. And guitar solos there don't have to be flashy. They just have to have feeling. And it opened my mind to the possibility. I was like, no, it's worth learning the whole fretboard. It's worth learning my scales, and like learning this kind of foundational vocabulary that kind of undergirds like all modern music in a sense. And from there, I ended up, because of Toronto being what it is, I ended up connecting to a bunch of guys at the Toronto Central Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is squarely a very Caribbean church. And that got me like really, really deep into gospel music, started listening to like Ty Tribbett and Fred Hammond and all those guys, got really familiar with that. And so in my mind, I just love music, and I love how much of a broad vocabulary you can have if you appreciate it across the spectrum. So for me, especially when I came to appreciate the skill level that exists among gospel musicians, and then also, relatively speaking, the skill level that's required for like progressive rock and metal and just like the dexterity you need for it, I was like, oh, they're actually kind of doing the same thing, but for just very different purposes.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I think that gave me that foundation of thinking like, okay, really what musicianship is about is taking this craft and being able to say things with a lot of depth and a lot of breadth, and being able to like capture the whole human experience.
Yeah.
And so to me, it felt like all of it really did belong together. And when I started the band, that I kind of left home in Canada, we kind of over time winnowed down to like 3 people. Like the band membership shrunk. But when I started it, my idea was like, okay, I've written all these songs. I'm pretty ambitious compositionally, so I need some pretty high caliber musicians. And what we ended up with was like a keyboardist and a bass player from the like gospel music tradition, and then a drummer and other guitar player who were very much from metal, and then me kind of in the middle. And I was just like, okay, let's see what it sounds like when these 2 types of musicians play together.
Yeah.
And that really helped us develop what our sound was early on. So yeah.
That's really interesting. Like you saw the vision to merge the 2 worlds, and I guess Kozen is what came out of it.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, I really like that.
You answered a question that I wanted to ask, which is funny.
Well,
So I was gonna say, like, how did you find that sound? Because it feels like a unique sound,
yeah.
especially in the Christian space as well. For so many musicians out there trying to find a sound, especially as a band. Soloist is one thing, but then like you bringing others into it, it's like,
Yeah.
how are we all agreeing on what sound we want?
Right. I mean, at one level, at least the how are we agreeing part does involve a little bit of quasi-dictatorial leadership on my part. Not to
Fair
throw
enough.
myself under the bus. Like, I try to be, collaborative and cooperative in my process. But I'm the lead songwriter, so I can kind of lay the groundwork of the core of a song and say like, okay, I do kind of live in both these worlds, and so I can talk to a metal guitarist like a metal guitarist, and I can talk to gospel musicians like gospel musicians. Like it was always funny to me because when we would be like rehearsing a song, or if we were learning a new song, I would talk to my gospel guys and be like, "Oh, guys, it's like I don't know, 4, 5, flat 7, and then back to the 6 and whatever. And that is meaningful to them, but completely meaningless to metal guitarists who approach theory from a very physical standpoint, where like, you know, the open low string is so vital to metal. Like 0 is a legitimate number in metal harmony, which doesn't make sense in like standard music theory. But yeah, it's just a lot of O's. So I had to kind of almost speak two theoretical languages there. But kind of to answer the question more directly, I think being in a band, properly speaking, like where there's a lot of people contributing the individual parts, in a way, you get to have the sound just emerge, because at some point I do have to take my hands off how is the drummer playing, how is the keyboardist playing, how's the bass player playing, and that means that I get other people's flavors by default. And so it's an interesting kind of push and pull dynamic between where do you really direct things and where do you just let people be themselves. And it's in that kind of dialectic that a sound emerges. And yeah, that's kind of it. So I'm only partially in control of that.
I like that. It's like knowing as much as you can control part of it. There's a point where you're like, this is going to sound how it's going to sound, and trusting that you've pulled together the right people to get the right sound from it.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like I remember you talked about there was something that kind of unlocked where you started being like, oh, this makes sense, and it makes sense for me to learn this and to do that. I remember I read a book. My music teacher at school gave me a book that said it was like a jazz piano book, because I was like, I want to learn how to play jazz. And then the first page of the book was remind your students that the basic fundamentals you teach them are enough for them to start writing their own songs and compositions. And I read that bit and I was like, thank you very much, threw the book away. I can go.
That's amazing.
Which I probably shouldn't have done. But hey, here we are. I started,
right?
which is the most important thing. So I'm always curious as to like, what was the point where someone kind of in their musical journey was like, oh, I have the tools and I can just go and make the music.
There's no excuse now.
Yeah, I think early on, because I thought, like, once I clued into the idea that, like, being in a band would be so cool and having my own music would be so cool, from there, it was just like, oh, of course I'm going to try to write my own music. And I immediately began churning out trash. And thankfully, like, I gave myself the room to be bad or to not be very good at it and be terrible at recording, and to just keep trying it anyways. Like, I'm sure if I could go find that old computer that had all of my like earliest attempts at songwriting on it, I'm sure I would be deeply embarrassed. But like, it's the same thing as like, okay, thanks, throw away the book. But I mean, like, I've been trying to write music basically since I was like 13 years old. So it's been a long haul. Like, you know, just riffs with really, really basic programmed drums. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, it's that the fearlessness, that willingness to just try, that really does get you started, right? It really does set you on the path. And that's the only way to get good, is to accept being bad. Yeah. At least initially. So
yeah, so it's gonna be bad, but hey, I'm gonna try it anyways. And I'm gonna find there's gonna be something good in there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, even just the obedience of, okay, I've been given this song, let me just do something with it, because you never know, someone might need that song.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the beauty of it is when you do just kind of take that leap of faith and take a chance on the gift you've been given. Like, there really is no telling how far that'll go.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Which is pretty cool.
It might be time to find that old computer, Max, and
maybe.
Yeah.
If you don't want them, we'll take them.
We'll revamp some of those songs. All right, so the song we want to talk about today is As Wide as Zen. From I believe it's the last EP before you guys took a break.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it a break. Sunwaves. Oh, I love that. Oh, he's got the physical. Is that a physical CD or?
This is a physical CD. Yeah, this is.
Love that.
For all the CD players that everyone totally has and uses all the time.
Can you talk us through what was happening in your life when you wrote this song in particular?
Oh man. That song was surprisingly quick considering like our normal turnaround time. Like sometimes it'll take us years to get a song done. And that one, I think pretty much within 2024, one of my bandmates pitched the initial demo and then like we got it done by summer. But basically the way that happened was my guitarist, who was kind of a very, very active co-writer in the band, came up with an initial demo for it. And we kind of changed some things around. But as soon as I heard the first demo, I thought to myself, we have to do that. It feels like a natural continuation of what was previously, and I guess still is, our biggest song, To the Wind. And it felt stylistically like very, very similar to that. And I really wanted to capitalize on that. In terms of what was going on in my life at the time, first, I knew that this move was on the horizon. It wasn't like right on the verge of happening, but I knew it was coming up. And so I was thinking a lot about change, and I was thinking especially a lot about the prospect of having to put the band on hiatus, at least from live shows, for a potentially indefinite period of time, and therefore wanting to think like, how do I sum up this thing that we've been doing since like 2015? I started working on it in like 2014, like at least writing the initial songs for this project, and I wanted to, in a sense, kind of tie a nice little bow on top of the experience so far over the last like 9 years, which is why the title of the song is what it is. The kanji characters of my name. So Kozen isn't actually my last name, it's my middle name, but I just present myself as an artist as if it's my last name. But the characters there, the first one, Ko, can also be pronounced Hiro. So in my family, like all the men kind of pass that character down. Like my dad is Hiroki, my cousin is Kota, my grandfather is Koe, grandfather was Koshin. So it's kind of a thing that gets passed down through the family. And then the second character, Zen, it's not the same Zen as like what you'd associate with like Japanese Buddhism. It's a different character, but it basically means like virtue or goodness or something like that. So like wide virtue.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, let me kind of name a song after the name of the band as a way of saying like, this is a statement of this is who we are cumulatively across the whole history of what we've been doing. And then obviously I had to not just be self-indulgent, but actually make a point with that concept, which is why, again, I was like, let me do something really, really unique with this song. I'm sure you noticed that there's more than one language used in the song.
Yeah.
And that choice was very intentional to kind of reinforce not only the like experiential point of the song, but the theology of the song, which I'm sure we will get into. But yeah, that was kind of maybe the biggest part of what I was thinking of was not an ending, but essentially trying to revisit what it meant to be in this band and make a sort of summary statement.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I first heard it, it was the languages definitely stood out to me, because I was like, oh, okay. And then you hear a different language, because sometimes I'm expecting that to be English. I'm like, no, he didn't mispronounce like an English word.
Yeah.
That's a completely different language. And then you kind of catch it. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. What languages are represented in this, and which band members do they represent as well?
Correspond to? Yeah. So obviously the song is predominantly in English. And then I think there's little spatterings of like small things. Like I say hallelujah, which is technically a Hebrew word in the song. So in the lyrics, I just always put it in Hebrew. I used one like biblical Greek word as well, pleroma, which means fullness. Pulled that from Colossians chapter 1. Probably the most frequently used language in the song is Japanese by far. And so there's Japanese. There is one line in Tagalog, Filipino. The guitarist and the drummer in my band are Filipino. And I was like, let me also like throw a
For them.
line to them
Yeah.
as well. And then there's one word in the bridge of the song and a section at the end of the song that are a little hard to explain without explaining my cultural background.
Yeah,
So
please do.
I grew up telling people I'm half Japanese, which by all accounts is true. But so my dad comes from Okinawa. I don't. Have you guys heard of Okinawa before?
Yeah.
You have. Okay. Yeah.
I haven't.
I think Adventists also have like an advantage on that because we've got the popularity of the Desmond Doss story and, you know, Hacksaw Ridge, like that battle was
Yeah.
on Okinawa and stuff like that. So basically, the Ryukyu Kingdom, this string of islands in like the kind of subtropical part of the Pacific Ocean that's like between Japan and Taiwan, kind of. It used to be its own kingdom independently and kind of a maritime go-between between China and Japan and Southeast Asia, that had its own language, had its own distinct culture until the late 1800s when Japan annexed it and said, like, this is Japan now. And with that came, you know, language assimilation policies and stuff. World War II was very, very bad for the island in a lot of ways. And then after World War II, there was this kind of extended American military presence that still technically hasn't left. And that has a lot to do with the kind of political and military partnership that exists between Japan and the United States since then. And so the Okinawan identity has been like very heavily assimilated into the Japanese identity. But yeah, there's this complicated dynamic of like Japan doesn't recognize the Okinawans as an indigenous group because out of I can't remember exactly the percentage, but it's like a significant majority, like 60 to 70% of all U.S. military bases in Japan are on Okinawa.
Oh, okay.
And I think the logic of that is Japan says, well, that's just Japan. That's just Japanese people. It's not anyone different. So you can put as many military bases there as you'd like,
Yeah.
which also means put as much dysfunctional military behavior there as you would like. And you can imagine what that translates to. So that is the long way of answering that I included one actual word from the Okinawan language in the song. And then at the end of the song, there's this like chanted part that is technically part of Okinawan culture, but it's not like a translatable thing. It's more like the equivalent of like, hey, 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 like it just like kind of like how they would musically cheer for things while dancing. Like I included like how they would do that in like a local festival. But it's not like it doesn't have like any real semantic meaning per se. So yeah, it's like 3 or 4 or 5 something like that languages in the song
Yeah.
technically.
That's very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. I think it for me, it's the reason it stood out is because I grew up listening to a lot of music from Southern Africa. So there's a lot of languages. So like obviously we have English as a connector due to British colonialism, but
Right.
within that, people will write songs and will weave in local languages, or vice versa. It'll be like a Shona song, and then there'll be an English section to it. So every
Right.
time I listen to a song and language switches, for me that feels very natural. But I also pay attention to it, and I'm like, there's a reason why this has been done. So it was very interesting, like, and very cool listening to that and hearing like, okay, yeah, there's different language being represented here. So one thing I'm getting is I think there's like a lot of thought put into the song, not just this song, but like a lot of the songs that you write, and making sure that like you're representing the idea of the band and the representation of all the different parts of not just your band members, but even yourself and the history behind that. I'm always curious, like, what is your process when you're now approaching a song? So you got the demo from your guitarist. What's Max's process of, okay, I've listened to this, I want to write something?
Yeah. Lyric wise, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. It's kind of scattered in the sense that my process will look different each time in a sense. I do prefer to type things down just because I can like copy and paste and move things around. But I will sometimes also sit down with a notebook and just kind of do like a mind map. Like I'll sit down, write down a bunch of words, and then start writing down related words. Or even just one thing I like to do is I'll take any instrumental that I've got and just record myself singing gibberish over top of it. Or like gibberish that kind of vaguely sounds like words, and then listen back to it and be like, am I kind of intuitively saying anything? Are there words that just come to me and feel like they belong over top of this chord progression? And then from there, yeah, just drafting down words and stuff. Yeah, and then it's just a matter of, because my band worked like we lived pretty far apart within Canada, so we worked long distance. So it was a lot of sending demos back and forth to each other, and just like everyone recording their own part at home, sending it and be like, hey, I added a guitar part, or hey, I added a whatever. I've got a chorus melody, but I have no idea what to sing in the verses and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things like that. And because it's file sharing, I also had the option, like the structure of the song actually changed a few times, where I actually took certain sections that my guitarist had written. I was like, cut that in half, remove that part and put it at the end, or remove your end entirely and write a different ending based more on the verses, things like that, right? So yeah, it's I feel like every song in a sense kind of takes on a life of its own, but it really does kind of come back down to working with the recording process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, just out of curiosity, what are you using for like your file sharing and for recording? Because I always want to capture also the technical side of things as well, because sometimes people don't talk about that, and like actually it's nice to know like the tools that people are using, and maybe that could serve as a way for people to use that as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's been relatively low tech, so to speak, in the sense that like everyone in my band uses a different DAW. So I'm a Logic Pro guy. My guitarist uses Studio One. Our drummer works in FL Studio. So it's just like everyone's doing a different thing. Our keyboardist, he technically wasn't in the band anymore by the time we did this record, but when he was working with us, he was doing Logic for a while, but then he switched to Ableton, I think. So for us, really, it was just like, okay, we'll export WAV files, put them in Google Drive. We've got a big Google Drive folder. Google Drive is basically a band member at this point. Lately, as we've been continuing to work on new material that we'd already started before I moved, I've been collaborating with other people through BandLab. I've been finding that so useful because you can like be really collaborative in depth with people without having to like load things into like Google Drive and into my DAW and then onto my hard drive and blah, blah, blah. No, none of that nonsense. Just one place. It's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, power to BandLab, I guess.
These episodes should be sponsored.
In terms of the scripture scripture point of view, what scriptures were you kind of drawing inspiration from, and are there any that we can see in here?
Yeah. There's a couple that are pretty prominent. Maybe not prominent's the wrong word, but are definitely like explicitly in there. There is Colossians chapter 1, where I used that a lot in what I consider the bridge of the song. It's right when I start like singing in Japanese a lot and like kind of the heavy guitars come back in. There's a few lines where I say, so in Japanese I say the equivalent of, from beyond the thick fog beauty descended, the pleroma was pleased to dwell. That is from a line in Colossians 1 that says like, in him the fullness of God was pleased to dwell. So talking about the incarnation of Christ. And then it also talks about how it mentions like the ministry of reconciliation and the idea of being reconciled to the Creator through Christ. So the song is dealing with like uncertainty and the difficulty of navigating, like, how do you know your faith is true in a world that has so many faith traditions, so many cultures, so many different ways of approaching life, which is also why there's so many languages in the song. Yeah. And so the point of the bridge of the song is to say like, oh, okay, there's more than just like hypothesizing about it, but God stepped into human history and lived among us, and that's a really important part of this. So I wanted to bring that language into it, and I felt like that chapter did a good job of kind of tying God as the maker of the world and Christ as the redeemer of the world together in one concept. So that's a really important part in terms of scripture. And the other really, really major thing, and probably honestly one of the most important scriptures in my life, comes from Paul's speech on the Areopagus in Acts 17, when he's talking to the Greek philosophers and quotes Greek philosophers at the Greek philosophers. So the one line in Tagalog that appears in the song is "Sa Diyos na hindi kilala," which is from the Tagalog translation of the New Testament, and that's the phrase "to the unknown God," which is what Paul is talking about when he goes to Athens and he's talking to them about, like, I saw this altar to an unknown God. Well, let me quote your own poets at you and tell you, actually, there is a lot for you to know about this unknown God, right? And I thought it would be really interesting to quote that line in a language that is at once very far flung, like very far removed culturally and geographically from the biblical world. Obviously, the Philippines are really far. But also you can tell just by looking at the word Dios, that is very clearly a product of Spanish colonialism in the Philippines, right? Like that's just a very Latin-derived Mediterranean word for God. And this is where I think I start doing some things theologically that might scare people a little bit, but I think there's a point to it. I had mentioned that the song is kind of about working through the uncertainties of how do you reconcile like multiculturalism with a Christian worldview. One of the things I grew up noticing, or at least noticed more and more as I grew up, like for a long time in my childhood, before I started moving around, my family went to the Toronto Japanese Seventh-day Adventist Church. My grandpa pastored there, on and on, like a lot of family history in the Japanese church. And I eventually clued in. I was like, we have the Sambika, we have the Japanese equivalent of the Seventh-day Adventist hymnal, but it's all Western songs translated into Japanese. There's no Japanese melodies, properly speaking, in any of and there's no originally Japanese composed songs in this book. That's interesting. Why? Why is it like that? And I think for a lot of people who come from global South cultures or just things that are outside of what's traditionally considered the West, you eventually run into this question of like, how do I reconcile my heritage, my identity, all of these things with this thing that is at least stereotyped wrongly as Western, right? And I say wrongly in the sense that like originally this is like a Southwest Asian / North African religion, but obviously the intervening history has a lot of European stamp on it. So I get the issues there. But I think for me, I was looking at it as like, okay, how do I begin asking the question about a multiplicity of cultures in light of what is actually in Scripture? Like, what is it actually giving me in terms of reconciling things without having to downplay one or the other? To me, I thought it was really, really interesting to look at the dynamics of Paul and his cohort of apostles and church leaders in the book of Acts as they interface with the polytheistic traditions of the ancient Mediterranean in the book of Acts, because you see there's that one moment where Paul and Barnabas are in Ephesus, I think, and the people, like, they do like one little miracle and the people are like, oh my goodness, it's Zeus and Hermes, wow. And they almost make sacrifices to them, and then Paul rejects it, and then they're like, oh well, then let's kill you. But
0 to 100.
I know, like, talk about 180s, right?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. Having, I went to seminary and stuff. So having the luxury of being able to like read the New Testament in Greek, I clued in that when they called Barnabas Zeus, there's multiple different ways that the ancient Greeks referred to Zeus. And one of them is the way that's kind of spelled like Zeus. But the thing is, it's it's not Zeus, it's Zeus with almost like a D in it. And I was like, oh wait, that's very close to Deus. And when the Ephesians call Barnabas Zeus, the English translate it as Zeus, but there's another way of referring to him, which is Dias, like the equivalent of Dias. And I was like, wait a second, that's Dios in Spanish and Dieu en français and Deus in Latin. Like that's a significant portion of the Western Christian world still uses that word to refer to God.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, like, if you're looking at it from within the world of the New Testament, that's a pagan name for God. That's a pagan name for God, and yet it became standard so much in like the Mediterranean parts of Europe that when the Spanish end up in the Philippines, now that name that used to belong to Zeus is now the name for Yahweh that gets introduced to these soon-to-be Filipino Catholics, and now you've got Dios all the way over here in Southeast Asia. Like, wait, what is going on? Who are we referring to? Who are we referring to here? And in the second verse of the song, there's a line that says, well, just the second verse says, "Sing hallelujah into the light that you've seen. I often wonder if someone is singing back to me." Like I'm talking to the sky. Who's actually up there? Who's talking back to me, if anyone? And then, sa Diyos na hindi kilala, to the unknown God, we take a chance on a name, not knowing if it would call itself the same. And it's that thing is like, okay, we believe that Scripture is revelation, but how much do we know for sure? And how much is just like our best guess working with finite human language, working with the accidents of history, working with our own mental cognitive limitations to try to understand something that's so much bigger than ourselves? And to me, that actually really relativizes the problem of feeling like, oh my gosh, we're using pagan names for God. It's like, no, we're just using the names that we've already tried to give to like this bigger reality that's above us. I mean, frankly, I grew up in a Japanese church, and so I grew up hearing God called Kami-sama over and over again. And it's just normal, like Kami-sama, like, oh, that's just God. But the Kami are the like nature spirits in Shinto religion, right? And then Sama is an honorific because how dare you call anyone anything but Mr. or Mrs., right? It's, like you gotta be respectful.
Feel like some similarities between Japanese and Shona are so funny to me because I'm like, this is the same language. I feel like we're literally like certain things. So, for example, the word for God in Shona is Nwari, but then the way people would say it when I was growing up would always be Nwari Baba, which is Godfather. And like it was so rare that people would separate it. Obviously, like but like it was almost like a natural thing of you can't just do it as one thing. There has to be like a level of respect on top of the fact that you're saying God.
Yeah, no, you gotta keep Mr. or Mrs. or like the parental honorifics on there, because otherwise, who do you think you are talking to your dad like that? What's going on?
I love that.
I do find it interesting. Like, I feel like there's at least like phonetically, there's all these weird overlaps between Japanese and a handful of different African languages. Like, I feel like that's true with Swahili. I've seen it in a couple other languages too. I'm just like, man, what's going on here? But I'm not a linguist, so far be it from me to theorize. But, you know, coming back to like the Act 17 thing, my whole idea there is essentially just to say like, okay, I'm going to highlight the question of uncertainty. I'm going to highlight the question of like multiplicity of viewpoints and perspectives and cultures and ways of referring to God, and say like, okay, what if it's not so much getting it right technically, whatever the heck that means, that is as important as the openness and the willingness to seek and to respond to what is ultimately spiritually true. And then from that point, it then goes into, well, okay, in this Acts 17 situation, though, Paul does think he knows who he's talking about, and he thinks that whatever ultimate reality is, whoever God is, the early church has experienced it through the life of Jesus. And so he's like, this is the unknown God, so to speak, that I'm declaring to you. He stepped into our reality, right? God has vindicated him by the resurrection of the dead. And so I'm like, I'm bridging between that, like, here's what I have seen, here's the light that I have seen, to use almost Ellen White-ish language, right? Walk according to the light you have received. And then also, here's me still being realistic about the fact, like, hey, there probably is a whole lot that I don't really know for sure, and I can be okay with that because the trust element of this allows me to do that kind of back and forth thing. So yeah, I think those are the two easily biggest scripture points in the whole song.
Yeah.
A long answer to that question.
No. That's really, really good. Again, I'm always like amazed at like the thought process and the intentionality behind every single kind of aspect of this song. As you mention it, I'm like, yeah, that this makes sense as to why all of these things are in there. I really like that.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what's your favorite part of the song?
Ooh. That's so tricky. I feel like, I mean, it's a song, right? So all the parts depend on each other in a sense. I do like that. I do like that bridge part. We have a lot of stuff, like the chord progression really changes there. I like the guitar parts in that section. One of the things that's cool with this song is that we've got a second vocalist. It's actually my niece, Shondell, who really wanted to try out singing with the band. And so during the process of recording the record, I was like, oh, okay, we've got a female vocalist coming on board. And she's on not all of the songs, but most of the songs on the record. And that was her first time really, like, she'd sung before, also grew up in church. But that was her first time recording. And then also she does one of the main screaming parts in the song. Even in the bridge, like one of the screaming parts is her, which was pretty fun because a lot of people hadn't heard her do that musically before, so that's fun. I really like the bridge of the song. I really, really like the ending instrumental section. There's there's a unusual instrument that I play in it. It's called the sanshin. It's I'm sure you guys have seen this like Japanese type of banjo thing before. That's the shamisen. The mainland Japan version is a much larger instrument that actually got introduced from Okinawa. So the sanshin in Okinawa is a much smaller kind of 3-string banjo of sorts, which itself came from China before. So there's a long history behind that instrument, but I was like, okay, if the point is saying like there's probably a little echo of the divine in all cultures, let me really, really highlight Okinawan culture in this instance and like bring a traditional instrument into it. So I really do love that ending instrumental section. We get to
Did you learn
the
how to
guitar
play that
parts go
instrument
crazy.
for this song, or did you already know how to play it?
I had been already in the process of kind of learning it a bit. I went to Okinawa for the first time in 2018, and I got to go with my dad, which was pretty special. And he was there a little bit longer than I was. I was in school at the time, so like I came back earlier than him, and he surprised me. We had gone into this little like market area where like way back in the day, like my grandma used to run a shop there when they still lived, like before they moved to North America. And we went into this like market area, and there was a local who was selling instruments, and I tried one out. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I did not know that my dad went back and actually bought the sanshin for me and then brought it back. Yeah, so that was like a really, really special gift. So ever since then, I was like working on learning it. And then when this song came around and I realized what it was going to be about, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is like, I have to put it in this song. There's no way. I have to put it in here. So, yeah. I'm still not a master of it by any stretch, but I could, use the magic of multiple takes and take comping to make it real good. Yeah.
Oh, we love the magic of take comping. It's it's a beautiful thing.
A lifesaver.
There is a bit in this when towards the ending, it's like infinity finds me now and then, and now it's everything I know. When I was listening to that, it reminded me of one of my favorite songs from King's Kaleidoscope, The Rush, that talks about kind of that it's a journey of someone, realizing that they have this apathy and they have a lot of doubt as well, but trying to get back to kind of like that childlike feeling of, I believe, even though I don't know everything, I still believe. And like you said, there is the light that I have and the things that I'm sure of. Yeah, I'm very sure of those. But then there's other things that I'm like, maybe I'm not 100% on. There's no guarantee, but I'm going to choose to believe, and I'm going to choose to have this hope in who God is, and the fact that we're all in this together as well. So when I was listening to that, it gave me the question of, what other songs kind of were you listening to, or have you listened to now, that remind you of this particular song?
Yeah, that's actually really cool, and I do send me the name of that song because I do want to check that out. I'm very curious for seeing things in that kind of vein. The only other song that I can immediately think of that is like actually kind of was partially the inspiration for me writing this song is a song called Satellite by POD. Do you guys know POD? No? Would you recognize it if someone's saying, we are the youth of the nation, we are. Not ringing a bell? Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. That's very early 2000s. That's yeah, it might be past people's time. They were like a really, really big band in that like early 2000s nu metal era. And they were one of the like few Christian bands in that space to get like mainstream big. But they had a song, it was the title track off of their album that came out in 2001, Satellite. And he talks in that song, I mean, he's also using ambiguous language to talk about a God that he does believe in explicitly Christian terms, but even just like the idea of a satellite, like some nondescript object that's kind of like circling the earth above you, and it can send signal to you and stuff, but you can't really see it with the naked eye when you look up there. Like it's kind of a very evocative image of God. And he talks about one of the lines he says in the song is that like only time will tell if it's truly for real. I can't change your mind. All I know, this is what I feel. Whether we're wrong or right, please keep my life in sight and never take your eyes off me. And I love this idea of like talking to God about like, I have all of these words and concepts that I would use to describe you and conceive of you. And yet here I am praying to you right now. And I know I can't wrap my mind around who and what you are. So even if I have completely misunderstood all of this, like, please at least keep your eyes on me, and like, I'm willing to trust you, not only with like, I think I believe the right things, but also I'm willing to trust you with like my own fallibility and trust you with the fact that like, maybe I'm wrong. And in that case, I just have to believe that you're good anyhow. And that, I think that really spoke to me and gave me also a bit of a desire to write a song like that. Just because I feel like a lot of Christian music over relies on certainty, over relies on this like overconfidence of a sort, which I get where that comes from. Like, we want to be bold, we want to be confident, but I know that it also leaves a lot of people behind when they don't have that. And I think that experience also needs to be taken seriously, and we need to make room for it. In the same way that we need to make room for more multiculturalism in the church and a less Eurocentric way of doing things. So I was like, let me address all of these things with one song.
That's awesome. I like that you're tackling, all of the issues that we're facing in one song at a time. I love that.
It was an ambitious song for sure.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. What has been the, I guess, reception when you speak to other people who've listened to the song?
Yeah, I think in terms of like close friends that I've shared it with, who've heard it, some of them will say that it's like one of the best songs we've ever written, which I think is probably true. I mean, it was a very high effort song, so if it comes across as good, that's because we tried to make it good. So there's that. I think generally speaking, I mean, when we dropped it, like, we didn't have that much promo going for it. The music video we did for it is about as low budget as you could do. We just like took our phones and a GoPro along with us to like every show we played in 2024. And hey, boom, there you go. Put a little filter on it. But like even without that much promo, it got, you know, a reasonable amount of play on Spotify. Like it almost instantaneously was just like, oh, we just released it, 4,000. I was like, okay, look, it's not, you know, life-changing numbers, but I'm happy with that. You know, like people did listen to it, so I'm happy with that. And then it's also, I think, a little skewed because since this song is so ambitious and kind of lyrically crazy, it's given me a lot of opportunities to talk about it, whether just in normal conversation or on platforms, on podcasts and videos and stuff. And so it really, just by virtue of it being kind of complicated, has given me a lot of opportunities to have conversations with people. And I think that maybe for me, the reception really feels more like, it's not even so much the reception of how people react to the song, but the opportunities that opening this conversation has made for me, even just beyond the music side of things. Like it's given me more confidence to kind of approach people who are in really, really uncertain places and be like, hey, like I have this immediately relevant thing to talk about, or like an entry point for those conversations. And then I guess live, yeah, people respond to it really well. Like the handful of times we got to play it, people really seem to enjoy it. So yeah, I'm happy with the reception.
No, it's a good song.
Yeah,
Definitely a good song.
Thanks.
I'll leave our last question to Natalie.
Yeah. So this is a question we asked to everyone on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, who would you like us to interview next? Anyone that you'd recommend?
I will throw a handful of names at you that will hopefully be worth checking out. Michelle Odinma is really cool. She is pastoring out in New York City right now. We went to seminary together, and she is a very, very great singer-songwriter. A few years ago, she dropped an EP. Stories to Tell is the name of that EP. And, you know, she's a kind of acoustic guitar singer-songwriter type of person. Nice. But the EP is very multifaceted sonically. Like it's very, very colorful and vibrant. And so I think she's a great songwriter. She's definitely got plenty that's worth talking about. I think she'd make for a great conversation. Another person I'll mention is Chernelle Spencer. She's originally from Trinidad and Tobago, but she moved relatively recently to Toronto. So I saw her a handful of times before I left Toronto. She does, I think, more conventionally like worship style music, like gospel worship music. But again, you know, really strong songwriter, been doing music in the church for her whole life. And she's got this one, like a lot of her stuff is very power ballad-ish. And then she's got this one really fun song called Running Over that is, it's soca. What can I say? It's a soca song, but it's like really, really, really good. And I think she's just like a very multifaceted, very talented singer. And I know like she's kind of trying to build up more of a music career for herself too. So definitely someone worth talking to. I know she takes her craft seriously. So those are at least two names I could throw at you. And if I think of anyone else, like I anytime I get put on the spot with like, oh, can you think of? No, I absolutely can't think of. My brain is gone.
Yeah,
but if I think of anyone else, I will send their names.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely take a listen.
Yeah, we'll definitely reach out to them. If not of virtual, we'll try to do in person when we're over there in the US and in Canada. So yeah, that'll be lovely. So before we go, this is like the last bit of the show. We like to shout out our channel sponsor, which is Stay Lit Apparel. Natalie's older sister makes these wonderful clothes and wonderful designs.
Nice.
And Max, next time we're together in person, because you're still here, we'll have a jumper for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you can have something to kind of just take to a show or something like that.
That's great.
But yeah, thank you again for saying yes, and thank you so much for kind of just taking this time out to just explain the depth behind this song. I think it's been really, really interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for the chance to talk to you guys. This was really great. I've been looking forward to this all week, honestly. So it really means a lot.
Same, definitely.
This is a bucket list of Tino's kicked off.
Or 100%.
Hey, it's an honor to be part of it.
Amazing. Thank you so much to everybody for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.